Well, it's war is chaos, and this is chaos exemplified. And it's hard to figure out who's doing what to whom. The Wagner Group, to get back to them specifically here, there's been reporting here repeatedly over the last couple months where there has been military exchanges. There has been fighting between the Wagner Group and regular Russian army forces. The Ukrainians have been telling that story. Whether it's true or not, or it's partially true, we don't know.
Leader of Russia's Wagner mercenary group says he will withdraw his troops from the Ukrainian city of Bakhmut on the 10th of May because of ammunition shortages. Yevgeny Prigozhin's statement came after he posted a video of himself walking among his dead fighters' bodies. He blamed top Russian defense officials and swore he was furious. Tens of thousands had been killed and injured there, Prigozhin said. Now, Russia has been trying to capture the eastern city for months, despite its questionable strategic value. And the Wagner troops, who come with a fearsome reputation, have been heavily involved. So let's speak now to Colonel Brendan Kearney, who's a military affairs analyst and former chief of staff for the US Marine Corps forces in Europe, which required working closely with NATO. Colonel Kearney, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
It's good to be with you, Henry.
Thank you. So when I saw Prigozhin's statement, and it was all over social media, I thought, is this real? Does he mean this? Or is he doing a bit of disinformation? Can I trust what I'm seeing here? The bodies were blurred out, thankfully, on the video I saw. What was your reaction when you saw it?
Well, you kind of sum up my my feelings, Henry.
Yeah.
This guy. Typical, sadly, for human conflict, it brings out the best and the worst of humanity, and I think in this case we're approaching the worst. This guy is an opportunist. He's not, by training, a military man. He's a cook. He's quite successful coming from St. Petersburg with a series of restaurants. So he's a capitalist that did well and came to the attention, apparently, of Putin, about a decade or so ago. And he's established this mercenary force, this private military company, the Wagner Group, that is made up primarily of former military men and thugs and convicts. And he's been fighting here in Bakhmut. He's made a huge deal about the importance of Bakhmut and about the contribution of the Wagner Group and whatever success they've enjoyed there so far. But he's also antagonized the Russian military to no end. And the Russian government, with his constant complaining and whining about the lack of material support that he's getting from a military organization that is finding itself hard-pressed in being able to defend against the Ukrainians. So this is an interesting situation, a side story that maybe somebody will make a movie out of one of these days, and sadly it will be a comedy or a horror movie.
Well, it sounds more like a horror movie, Colonel, because Yevgeny Prigozhin's group, his Wagner group, have a fearsome reputation for what they did in Syria during the height of the conflict there, and in various African countries where they have an increasing presence. Their footprint there is noted, including by the Ghanaian president who complained about it recently. They're not in Ghana, but they're in neighbouring countries. What does his complaint, the fact that he's pointing the finger and swearing directly at the defense minister Sergei Shoigu and the chief of general staff Valery Gerasimov, both personally appointed by President Putin, whom he's supposed to be close to?
That's exactly right, and that's one of the complex aspects of this entire situation. He's been complaining for months that he is not getting the ammunition and he is not getting the artillery and air support that he feels he deserves in his military operations in Bakhmut. But again, anything he asks for is going to compete with what the Russian military needs throughout the Ukrainian theater of operations. So, Putin made a hell of a bad decision when he allowed this guy to come from overseas and obviously the terrible things he was doing in the countries you just described that we know of. And now he's been complaining about the Russian senior leadership. He is careful in really not aligning Putin per se, specifically with his complaints, but certainly after the senior Russian military leaders, it's fair game for him. He's been haranguing them for months over what he perceives to be a lack of support.
You can imagine that the military analysts and the senior leaders in Kiev will be delighted at that video. To them, probably it will smack of desperation. And then we've had all the other events this week, the alleged drone attack on the Kremlin. We've had a so-called Russian train of death blown up by a drone. And we've had other incidents taking place on the Russian mainland. And of course, then we've had all these attacks on civilian targets in Ukraine. How do you assess what's happened this week?
Well, it's war is chaos, and this is chaos exemplified. And it's hard to figure out who's doing what to whom. The Wagner Group, to get back to them specifically here, there's been reporting here repeatedly over the last couple months where there has been military exchanges. There has been fighting between the Wagner Group and regular Russian army forces. The Ukrainians have been telling that story. Whether it's true or not, or it's partially true, we don't know. But it's really an interesting situation. I'm a history guy, 31 years in the U.S. Marine Corps, so it's my profession. But to see this type of thing in the middle of Europe, here in the supposed modern world, is just incredible to see the applications of modern technology, the victimization of innocent people, and an all-out war that really smacks more of World War I on the Western Front in terms of the way it's being conducted. So it's interesting times that we're watching here.
It certainly is. But although the troops on both sides, you alluded to World War I, are bogged down. Think of those awful trenches between 1914 and 1918. There is talk, and maybe it's overhyped, of a Ukrainian counterattack. What signs are you seeing of that?
Well, I do see signs of it, and some of that, again, is just based on experience on my part, and and some of it would be, educated guesses, and I would admit to the guesswork. The Ukrainians have a very, very well developed policy of keeping Western reporters and their own, keeping the media away from the front, except at times or places of their choosing. And they're very good at that, and I give them credit for that. But they've kind of gone into silence now here for the last couple of weeks. The weather's improving, and we've all known that the weather would have to improve in order for them to be able to conduct offensive military operations against the Russians. There certainly has been a buildup in terms of the weapon systems that have been sent from the West to Ukraine. And in many cases, we've seen no evidence of these items being on the front lines, which tells me that they're husbanding them. They're going to use them at a time and place of their choosing. We've heard of the training that's been going on. I mean, the British have conducted training. The U.S. military has conducted training, both in their own respective countries, but also in Poland and other locations in Western Europe. So I do think an offensive is pending. And the Ukrainians really don't have much of a choice. The momentum has been on their side, and I think they need to attack. They need to attack a Russian military that, quite frankly, is sitting on its posterior. I have another word I'd use, but is sitting on its posterior, and really the initiative needs to continue with the Ukrainians. It's not, you lose the initiative, you lose momentum, and suddenly you find yourself on the defense. And I don't think the Ukrainians want to do that. They want to eject the Russians. Whether they can be completely successful or not, no one knows. But I think they're going to put quite a dent into the Russian defensive positions that are in Ukraine.
Final thought, let's pull back a bit and look at the forthcoming BRICS summit, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. There's meant to be a summit in August, but South Africa is a member of the International Criminal Court, and there's been consternation in that country over whether President Putin will be able to attend in person because under the terms of that treaty, South Africa would have to arrest him. What do you make of that conundrum and the fact that he is ploughing ahead with these great ambitions for the BRICS to be a real rival to the G7?
It's a great question. And I saw some media reporting out of South Africa here a week ago. It was unattributed, so you have to take it with a grain of salt. That he has been privately warned by South Africa not to come precisely because of the conundrum that South Africa faces with this warrant that's out there. And again, these countries that are somewhat loosely aligned with Russia for a variety of reasons, or are supportive of Russia in the sense because they're the opponent of the West, find themselves in a situation where international law has spoken in this case with the issuance of that warrant. So what do you do if you're one of those countries? You promote that type of thing. You say that this is what you want to do to go after other things, although in Africa there's been a great deal of reluctance against the enforcing of some of these warrants because it's African despots that are the subject of them.
Yeah.
So this is a tough question for South Africa to resolve itself with, I don't know how they're going to get around it.
Yeah.
It'll keep some lawyers well employed for a while, both in South Africa and with some of the other countries of the BRICS as they try to figure this thing out. But my bet is Putin's he won't go.
No.
I think for a variety of reasons. I think he doesn't want to be far from the protections that Russia provides to him. His term there may be tenuous. It may be terminal here in the short run. We don't know. But I think Putin's going to stay in Russia.
Probably
in
just as well for him.
Many places he hides.
You're a historian, Colonel. Often the coup takes place when the main man is out of town. So